Hi, Mariama. Thanks so much for agreeing to talk to me in this way. As you know, we've been running this series called "The Gospel According to You," and we've been interviewing members of our congregation. But I just thought it would be a great opportunity to get to know you, because you are coming to be our new curate. How fantastic!
Yeah.
In September. So thanks so much for agreeing to do this, and I hope that I can ask you some questions that that you might enjoy answering.
Yes. Hello. Hi, Lucy. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to join the series. I hope I can answer all your questions. Yes, I'm very excited to be a curate at SJP from September. Really, really looking forward to it.
Brilliant. So, not everybody gets ordained in their life. Not everybody who's a Christian gets ordained.
Don't do it. Sorry.
Can you just tell us a little bit about what is life like for you these days? Just start where you are. Where do you live? What does life look like? What do you do?
Well, I am in Wiltshire, in Royal Wootton Bassett, because my husband Ollie's ordained. So we are living in his parish. And I've been training part-time for the past 2 years. And so that finished in June, which was Tuesday evenings and some weekends. So that was full on because I was training part-time and working full-time. My family's in London, so I grew up in Northwest London, and so I go to London quite a lot. And before coming to SJP, my role was as Queen's Almsman at Westminster Abbey. So I was in London every Sunday anyway. And I've done that for 6.5 years and gave that up in June. So life has been busy with different locations. I used to say to family and friends, the best place to find me is on a train, because I commuted a lot between Oxford, London and Wiltshire. And now it's just going to be Wiltshire and London, which is great for a bit anyway. So I'm looking forward to that.
And when you were saying you were working full time, what's your career been, or what are you up to these days?
Well, my background's in education mainly. I think that's probably the umbrella under which I sit. And I've been in secondary education, taught for a year at university, and in the past few years I've been head of outreach solutions at the University of Oxford. So it's been busy because it's been looking at student experience, but also the admissions outreach, how we can engage and make the undergraduate population more diverse. And that's been fantastic. I've had a great team and I really enjoyed the role. And I think it's interesting to sort of transfer some of those learning points to the Church of England, given that I've been working for another ancient institution, and I'm looking forward to transferring some of those skills across.
And what's kind of brought you to ordination? I mean, that's probably a really long story in a way, but help us understand what's been your path to saying yes to God, to being ordained. I mean, a deacon in September, but then obviously a priest next year.
I think for me, there's been a real journey of learning more about what God wants from me and from my life. I think it's fair to say that I never wanted to be ordained. I think that being ordained is a real call to obedience and to saying yes to God, and I think life is about chapters and seasons, and I think that this is a new season in my life that's been co-created with God. And I think there is something about ordination that speaks to a fuller sense of being. That's not to say if you are not ordained that you don't have a full sense of being, but I think it is a specific call. And I think everyone has a call on their lives, and that could be multiple callings. And I think that this is one of my callings. I think certainly my first calling has been to education and to young people, about whom I'm really passionate in terms of their access and opportunity to and for things. And in terms of their ability to fulfill their potential. So I think there is this second very large calling to ordination, which is about more of a public witness of my private faith. And I think that that has been a real challenge, because for me, saying yes and being ordained, it means I've stopped running away from God. And I think there are only so many bellies of the whale into which you can climb and survive. And I think God is very patient and God is very kind, but it was time to stop running.
I get the sense this has been quite a long journey then for you. Or was there a moment when you thought, gosh, I think that's what's going to happen to me? Or was there a moment where you said yes? Or has this actually been a more gradual thing? You've described being a bit reluctant about it. I love that.
I think it's very kind to say a bit reluctant. I think I've been very reluctant. And I think I am a not yet kind of person with God. I think I can stretch it out for as long as possible. I think there have been some very key moments in prayer where I felt that actually there was no avoiding this, but also some key moments with other people. I think that it's been very, very humbling for me how many people have felt able to tell me their story, which is a real, it's just such a gift. And that used to happen quite a lot when I was commuting. People would just reveal what's on their mind and on their hearts, and I carried that back into prayer. So I felt that actually I can keep doing this. And then I had a DDO that, you know, going through when I started the formal discernment process, which was almost, I think it was about 7 or 8 years of me carrying it on my own. And we'd gone through that process, and he just said, Mariama, there is no one else for you to talk to. There is nothing else for you to do. You either have to go through with this or not. And I think that was a key moment as well.
And you said you've been training, it's been kind of Tuesday nights mostly, and then there's some in residential training. And could just tell us a little bit about that and how you feel about the, you know, being ordained in the Church of God, as we say, but also the Church of England.
Yes, I mean, I think training has been a revelation because I'm older, and I think that I come to training as a lot of the older students did, with a history and with you know, with another chapter behind us or several chapters behind us. And I think I say revelation because it's a revelation two ways. One, it's a revelation about yourself, about what you know and what you don't know about yourself. And that can be both joyful and excoriating. And I think it's been able to sit with both elements of the, you know, of that experience. And then I think the second part of the revelation is it shows you more about God. And more interestingly, it shows you more about the human interpretations of God. And I think coming out of that experience, you then realize that a lot of your role, I mean, certainly for me as a linguist, is about translation and interpretation. And it's about helping people understand, but also being open to learn, because a linguist is always learning. And I think that your ears have to be open and attuned to different phrases, different phrasing, different expressions, different vocabulary that you didn't know, a different syntax, all of which speak about the immensity of God and not being able to capture that perhaps in human creativity, but we try. And I think that is the privilege of being ordained, is that you walk with people in a way that allows them to experience God for themselves. And I think that I could have done that certainly, you know, as an educator, but I think there is something even more refined about being ordained. So training has been full on. It's been very tiring. I've written thousands and thousands of words, and I think it's been hugely rewarding in the end. I don't feel like that in the middle of it, but I feel like that now.
So are you ready?
No, not at all. But I have huge faith in the team at SJP, and that is the only thing that gives me a sense of confidence that there are wonderful people around, and the community, from what I've seen, having been several times for the worship before the lockdown, that it's a warm and affirming community. And I think that actually all of my inadequacies and inabilities will be held, which is really, really good. So yes, I don't think I'll ever be ready, considering I never wanted to be ordained. It's a constant, it's a daily, and I have to be honest about that. I think it's a daily struggle between the private and the public, because I think faith for me is a very private thing. But this is a very public call, and so it's lifting those things up for the glory of God, and making sure that actually, whether it's private or public, it still points to Christ, and that's really, really important.
Thank you. We're so looking forward to having you. We can't wait. It's I mean, one of the things that's been, I think, tough for your year, as it were, is that the ordination was delayed. I mean, lots of people have had very important moments in their life delayed because of this pandemic. But I mean, obviously, you should have been ordained in June, but now you're going to be ordained in September. So there is that kind of extra waiting time, isn't there? Has that been hard?
No, I think it's been really useful. I think it's allowed me to reflect and think about what to pick up and what to set down. I think it's given me a sense of, okay, how do I adapt my prayer life? Because when your home becomes your place of worship, and also your workspace, and also where you try and relax, it becomes pretty. I think it feels very intense. And so for me, this period has been about, okay, getting mentally prepared and emotionally prepared to serve, which is really, really helpful. So I've really welcomed that. I know it's been a really hard time for a lot of people, and I think I'm trying to hold on to the good and to the light and to the hope of this period, because I think the journey continues post COVID, and for ourselves as individuals, and for the communities to which we belong. So I'd like to say I'm thankful that there's been a bit of time, but I also recognize that the call feels all the more urgent as a result, because there's going to be an increased call to serve as a result of this pandemic.
I mean, we've all been living through the pandemic moment, and you and I have spoken before about, we think it'll probably be quite a long time before we know what all this means, really. I mean, certainly for society and for the church. We've also been living through a Black Lives Matters moment as well. And, the church has come under, and rightly come under, a lot of scrutiny, along with every other institution and aspect of society.
Yeah.
At this moment, what are your reflections on the Black Lives Matter moment, and the way that we can together, try to make change in our society, which is clearly so badly needed?
I think, and I know I've said this before, I think for me it's about the integrity of the table, and it's about who we welcome and how we welcome them. And I think that sometimes it has been difficult for minorities of any kind, whether it's through ethnicity or gender identity or sexuality, to feel that the table was theirs. And I think there's a great difference between the call to be diverse and the call to include diversity at the table. And I think that we can do quite a lot by listening, by acknowledging wrongs, by honoring people's stories, and then by acting. I think if we followed a Christ that only spoke, many of us wouldn't be Christians. And I think we follow a Christ that spoke and did. And that means that we also have to speak and also do. I think there's a great temptation to veer towards a symbolic, which is very easy to do. And I love the Church of England because of its liturgy, and because its liturgy affirms its identity, and because of the symbolic in that. But at the same time, change also has to be real. It can't just be symbolic. One of my favorite stories is the woman that was hemorrhaging and that audacity to touch the hem of Christ's cloak and wanting to hide, because I identify with that quite a lot in the crowd. And I think there is something about, okay, if Jesus had turned around and just said, I see you, and I'm just going to walk on, that's well and good. But the engagement in that dialogue as it's presented is quite intimate and it's quite honoring. It's, I see you and I hear you, and you are part of my family. You belong to me. And I think there is a belonging that the church needs to practice. The church doesn't practice belonging well enough. And I think that is the challenge for every single parish. It's to look around you and to say, who are we telling that they do not belong at this table? And who are we telling that they belong just because of the way they look or the way they talk or the school they've been to? Because that's not Christ. That is not Christ. Christ is about a space, whether you believe it's a kingdom or a court or a state, it is a space of belonging. And I hope the church gets better at that, because it's pretty crap actually at doing that. And I say that as a woman, and I say that as a Black woman, and I say that as somebody that's married to a Cheshire lad, you know, and I say that as somebody that is deeply committed to belonging. Because it isn't about me. I don't have to like it, actually. You know, as Christians, we don't have to like it. We don't have to like that Christ has said that the hemorrhaging woman belongs. But we have to understand that we are part of a family of belonging. So it's hard, because I think there's always a tension between the symbolic and the active real. But I think every church can do it. It's not beyond us. And I think every single church in this country can think about how to make that more real for them, really. So I've waffled on and on, but that's kind of what I want to say, that Black Lives Matter is an ongoing journey. I think it's been in the spotlight for very, very legitimate reasons. And I think that brutal murder of George Floyd was a line in the sand, but I don't think that because it's happened and everybody is now saying, oh, how awful, and you know, people are reading more and becoming more aware that's it, that's enough. If people looked at us, would they say that we were of Christ? If people looked at me and the way I talk to other people and the way I treat people, would they say that I was of Christ? And I think that is my mirror. And I think that should be the mirror of the church.
Thank you. We're going to get to know you over the next 3 years. You're going to be with us for 3 years, which is fantastic. And you're going to be, we often have the clergy team at St. James's is in different situations. So some of us are what's called stipendiary ministers, and others of us have different work as well. And you're going to be working, and then you're going to be with us, I think probably 2 evenings a week, we think, and on a Sunday as well. So that'll be fantastic. If you could kind of help us to get to know you initially, I mean, what kind of stuff do you really enjoy doing, apart from when you're not working and when you're being at home in Wootton Bassett? What kind of stuff do you really love to do, or I mean, are you passionate about badminton or music, or what is it? What is it that really gets you going?
I love walking, I have to say. I think there is something quite helpful for the mind about walking. So that could be long walks, or hill walking or hiking. I've climbed all the peaks in Brecon, and I really enjoy being outside. I think that I value the quiet of reading as well. I think I like reading. I think that's what you'd find me doing on my day off, reading in the garden or on the sofa. And because I really love crisps and dark chocolate and red wine, I need to exercise, and make sure that, you know, I could sort of keep everything in balance. But I used to play netball at school, and I played also when I started working in my professional life with a team, which was fantastic. So I enjoy that. I mean, I'm very, very rusty now. And I love football, even though I don't play. I played a little when I was a child, and I am an avid Arsenal fan, avid. But that shouldn't come between us. I just want to keep that conversation.
I'm Queen's Park Rangers, I'm afraid, but I'm not really very avid. I'm sorry to say. And our treasurer is a big Crystal Palace fan. So, and our market manager is a fanatical Tottenham Hotspur fan. So,
wow.
I'm afraid that Spurs and Arsenal, as I gather it, that's a bit of a rivalry, is it?
It's a tense relationship, but that is what I mean by the integrity of the table.
Look,
I don't have to like it. I don't have to like it, but I welcome everybody there, regardless of their football colours. And I think I enjoy being with people. I enjoy very much. And I write, so I enjoy writing letters. I'm quite old-fashioned. So I have epistolary relationships with a host of people who I don't see very often, actually, whether they're in the UK or abroad, but I still enjoy writing to them, and I really enjoy poetry. So that's kind of, wow. I'm in the world of letters if I'm not in the church.
Fantastic. And I mean, you were mentioning that you I think you grew up in London, or in northwest London, I think you said.
Yes.
So you kind of know London well. And we obviously have people who join us, particularly now, for our services from abroad and all around the place. But obviously there we are. We're right in the centre of London. So I mean, do you have a kind of favourite part of London? We've asked other people this. Is there a kind of favourite part? Or one of the questions we've asked people is, when were you last on the River Thames?
They're both connected for me. So one of my favourite parts of London is the South Bank, because as a teenager I'd get the train or the bus down from Neasden, and at that point the Jubilee line stopped at Charing Cross. So this is way before they built the extension. So I'd get off at the last stop, and then I'd walk to the South Bank. And at the weekend, I think they still do, they have a secondhand book fair out there. And what I loved, I think looking back, was just looking at the people. There were just different kinds of people. And I, of course I'd buy an old book or an old map, or, but I would just be on the South Bank, just looking at the river, looking at people, and then I'd just go back home. And sometimes I'd pop into the National Gallery and just sit and mesmerised, or, thinking about whatever teenage crisis I was going through at the time. And I think that there is something about that diversity of people, the group, just people walking, milling around, that I really, really enjoyed. And I think the last time I was at the river was again at the South Bank, which was New Year's Eve. Ollie and I came in to see Chekhov's Three Sisters at the National Theatre, which was fantastic. It had been relocated to Nigeria during the during the Biafran conflict, and Eliams did a really superb job with that sort of transposition, and it was fantastic. So I'm really grateful that the NT has been online. I think it's been very, very healing. I find the arts healing and necessary. And I think whatever we can do, whatever the church can do to support the arts, is incredibly vital for our sense of what it means to be human, and what it means to express the experiences and to integrate the experiences that we have. So I have missed the theatre an awful lot, actually, but it's been great to have the plays online every Thursday at least. That's been really helpful. So thank you, National Theatre. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just to kind of wrap up, we've called this series "The Gospel According to You," which is essentially to say, what is it that makes you tick? What is it that is at the core of your faith? And if you had to kind of hand on something to the next generation and say, okay, that's the gospel according to Mariama, how would you kind of sum it up? How would you communicate that in a short way?
I think the gospel, according to me, has 4 key elements. The first is hope, that it is a message that speaks to what we can see and also what we hope to see. And I think that's really important, because there's something about the human experience that can feel limiting. And if you're in a really difficult place, it can feel like that's the end. And I think there is something about hope that we need to keep saying over and over again. Not a kind of airy fairy rose tinted view of human experience, but that there's something in what we live and see and breathe that can be transformed. The second part is it's about light. I think there is something important about reminding ourselves that the darkness may feel really overwhelming and suffocating, you know, that sense that you are being stifled. But actually there is a light, there is something towards which we are called and towards which we are drawn, that speaks about not being alone, and that actually that your suffering and your pain can be seen and recognized and acknowledged. And so many people suffer in secret. And I think the church again needs to speak of light. The third part is about love, because love is incredibly challenging. It's easy to love people you like. It's not easy to love people you don't like. And some people you just can't love, frankly. And I think there is something about God holding on to a love that can carry you even when you feel you can't love, and even when you don't feel loved yourself. And that depth is incredibly important for the church to communicate. The church doesn't have the legitimacy to communicate it, actually, in many circumstances, but the church needs to regain that legitimacy. And the last part is freedom. You know, whose service is perfect freedom. One of my favorite lines of the BCP. It's about the liberation of heart and mind and soul, of imagination and ideas. It's about purpose. That freedom is not freedom for freedom's sake. It's freedom with purpose. And I think that if we can speak of hope and light and love and freedom, we will go a really long way to healing the world and healing ourselves, because everyone needs healing. Nobody's above that.
What an amazing note to end on. Mariama, we pray for you in these months as you prepare to join us. We're really delighted you're going to come and preach for us in August, which is fantastic. So thank you for coming to do that. And then you'll be ordained at the end of September, and you'll start your time with us. We can't wait to have you join us, and we hope that you will pray for us as we pray for you.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.